All right, we're still watching this guy talk about the Southwest Corridor super project that you are going to pay for.
They're nonprofits at a reduced price for the property. So we're able to essentially discount it. We do that usually through an RFP process so that we're very targeted about the kind of I'm sorry, it's escaping me. The kind of community development corporations that would participate in that. So we don't discount for private for-profit developers.
Oh, they don't, do they?
I'm sorry that was a little bit long-winded.
No, that was
answered
terrific. Thank you.
Okay,
appreciate it.
They don't just get you. Well, I don't know. Does anybody know where there's some low-income housing on any max line that was paid for like this? I don't.
Next question. We were very encouraged.
Okay, we're down to 20 minutes to go here. We're going to get done with this, and then we're going to watch a board meeting, but not today because I want to listen to dispatch.
To see that you put $1 million into your equity program in the general manager's budget this year. And can you tell us about
$1 million into this equity program that doesn't do shit? You know that, right? Doesn't do shit. It's just window dressing.
About how that increased appropriation is planned to be spent?
Certainly. The increase to the Department of Diversity and Transit Equity's budget, which is housed in the Office of the GM, is meant to support the planned cost of the first-year implementation of the new low-income fare program. As you heard...
Oh, so the low-income fare, that's $12 million, so they need $1 million to implement the... I guess that's what it always is. It's always 10%. They always take 10% for themselves. So $1 million a year... to administer this program. I mean, what is that, 10 full-time, what is that, 5, 10 full-time jobs?
HB 217, with this passage, Trimet now is committed and has the ability to launch a new low-income fare program that will allow adults between the ages of 19 and 64 who make under 200% of the federal...
See how he's reading it? The whole thing is scripted. It was all scripted. They have all the questions beforehand, and they're asking the questions based on what they've already submitted. That's why this is all scripted farce, all right? That's why I have such trouble watching it, because this has all been scripted out ahead of time so that nobody gets embarrassed. They don't, we got to look good, because these people are all in the same team. They're all part of what I call the state. The state is any organization that exists only because of our tax funds. Who doesn't serve us? None of these people serve us. They serve themselves.
Poverty level, be able to purchase discounted fares at 50% off the single use or day pass cost. And
they won't even give you a free pass. See how they are? I mean, you can't eat. They still want your fucking money. It's not like, well, we're going to give you a pass. If your income is low enough, you get a free pass. No. They still want your fucking money, these scum. And I'm arguing with all these people on Twitter and Facebook about this, and they don't get it, man. There's no point in talking to them because they don't understand the truth of what's going on here. They don't understand that the public is being bled dry intentionally. There's no heart and soul with these bureaucracies. They just exist for themselves.
72% off the cost of a monthly pass.
Oh boy, oh boy.
The budget increase is meant to support the cost of program administration staff, equipment, the hop cards, and contracts with community-based organizations and nonprofits and human service agencies that are going to do the recruitment, the outreach, the registration, and basically the program sign up in this first year.
So they're not... Oh, you got to be kidding me. Did I hear... They're not going to even give these low-income fares out through Trimet. They're going to have to go through these other agencies. Is that what I just heard there? That's what they've been doing, by the way. They give all their discounted tickets out through other agencies but Trimet, and then they don't tell anybody what the agencies are.
Terrific. And one of our commissioners was sick this morning, so we had to take a couple of additional questions, and I get the next one. And it's very long. So I'm just going to read it. Trimet is expanding service with more frequent buses and new bus lines. Could you tell us about some of the completed and planned changes? What data and methods does Trimet use to identify, evaluate, and select new and expanded services?
All right, now that's a question I want answered. I want to know how, because they didn't once again, and I know I sound like a broken record. They don't ask any public input on these things. When they decide we're going to have a new line 94, it's going to go over the bridge and down to Jefferson and over to wherever the hell it goes. They didn't ask anybody. They just made these decisions without asking anybody. So this is important. Let's see what they tell them.
Service needs. And how do service improvement objectives sync with diversity and transit equity objectives?
Jeez, here we go. They keep throwing that word around, diversity, transit equity, diversity, transit equity. It doesn't mean it. They just, it's like Trump saying fake news, fake news, fake news, fake. You know, if you say diversity, transit equity over and over and over, people actually think it exists.
Well, I'm going to take the answer to that, and I'm not going to read it because it's long. And I think you have in your materials the list of projects that...
Bernie Bottomley, the consummate insider in the Portland governmental circles.
We are putting out on the street or completed in this last fiscal year, and the plan changes. The board hasn't quite finalized that yet, but we're getting close to that final approval. What I'll just say about the list of improvements is that they fall into a number of different categories. So typically we make improvements to existing routes where we find overcrowding, there's not enough room on a bus for the passengers, and we pass them up.
Yeah.
That's kind of a no-no in the industry.
What do you mean by that? That's not a no-no. It's standard operating procedure. It happens every day in every transit district in the country. That's what do you mean it's a no-no?
We'll add additional buses on that route to accommodate the crush loads during the peak hours typically. So we make those kinds of changes. We add buses to routes to deal with.
See how he's not being specific. He's not telling us any. This has always been my experience with this shit. Is Trimet never gives you any specifics on these improvements. They just give you these generals. Well, if the route is busy, we'll add more service. But they won't tell you how they did that. They won't tell you how many trips they added, when they added them. They won't tell you that. You know, it's always very shifty.
With congestion, so if we have a 7-minute distant time between buses, we call that a headway. If we have a 7-minute headway and congestion is creating a slowing of that route to now it's 10 or 12 minutes between buses, we'll add buses to get back to the 7-minute headway. And what we are doing now, which is really exciting, is in addition to that, we're adding weekends and evenings. So you see a couple of the routes are being extended to 24-hour service, so that's really a benefit to those folks who work the swing shift and graveyard and who have very early call times for their morning jobs. So we are looking forward to really having better service for those night owls that work over the course of the evening. And then a couple of new routes. So those are always exciting for us. They tend to be fairly expensive because you're putting all of that service out all at once. So we don't have the opportunity to do those, multiple versions of that a year. Typically, we can add about one new route a year. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of those are focused on north-south service. So not necessarily service that's coming into downtown Portland, but is serving cross-town trips from East Portland to Columbia Corridor or down Clackamas County industrial area or in Washington County, typical north-south trips there as well. Always a little bit different, a little bit more of a challenge in places like Washington County where you don't necessarily have a road network that goes north-south. So trying to find our way through. And the commissioner from OHSU will appreciate that we're also adding quite a bit of new service up to OHSU.
Thank you.
It's one of the biggest trip generators destinations in the region. One of the biggest employers and many clients and patients that also visit the school, both up on the hill and down at the waterfront. So we're adding service to that major attractor. And then to the other question about how do we evaluate where to put service, it's a bit of an art and a science. The science part of it is we look at existing performance on our existing routes. We have automatic trip counters, so we know how many people are getting on the bus. We know when we're getting pass-ups because the operators have mechanism on their dashboard that they notify us when they're having pass-ups. That helps our planning team decide when and where we need to put additional buses. We keep very close tabs on where there's development, both housing and employment development. We know when there are major new employers going into the region, and we look to try to find ways to serve them. We do extensive outreach with the community. We have basically almost a year-long process of having conversations with the community about where they'd like to see service and getting input. We're plussing up that effort this year around the House Bill 2017 process and having very intensive budget workshops with the community, working with a number of nonprofits in the region that work with culturally specific organizations and communities to get their involvement. So we'll have very good input in this budget round and planning round about where folks would like to see additional service placed. And then we have a minimum service threshold, so we have a certain number of rides per hour that we look to have on a route, and if it runs below that, then we either look to change the route or do more outreach and communication, or ultimately, if the route doesn't perform, we cancel that route or move it somewhere else. And then finally, in Mr. Gardner's shop, we have a federal requirement, which is a Title VI analysis, which requires that we analyze any...
Yeah, I don't know why Trump hasn't got rid of that. If there's any goddamn federal regulation that should go out the window, is this, because it's just goddamn bureaucratic nonsense. This Title VI stuff, it doesn't result in anything. This is a good example of regulations that are useless. The Title VI analysis is just a way to take taxpayers' money and come up with some reports. It's completely wasteful bureaucracy. Come on, Trump, get on the ball, get rid of this one, will you? Come on, do something that helps somebody.
Significant change to the system for equity impacts to make sure that we're not adversely impacting communities, but also that we're not providing benefits to majority communities that are not shared by minority communities. So every change we make has to pass through that analysis. And then just to further on the question of diversity and how we sync that up with our service planning process, we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years, as has Metro and the City of Portland and others, to identify where low-income and minority communities live and what the trip destinations are that they're most interested in reaching. And so we've taken a lot of that information. We have a very sophisticated GIS mapping program that allows us to do heat maps and other visual representations of where trip origins and destinations are. We work with many of the companies to get diaries and surveys of their employees. Where do you live? What do your trip beginning and ends look like? We use all that information to put into our analysis.
If it were up to me and I was in charge of this Trimet system, I would say, okay, we're done building, we're done expanding, and until we have achieved 95% or more verifiable on-time performance with our buses and trains for both categories, we do not consider any more expansions, and all the additional money that comes into this system goes to make sure we can achieve the 95+% on-time performance verifiable by outside sources, critics like me or Opal or anybody who's not part of your structure needs to be able to verify this. Because you're not reliable, we don't believe you. We know how you are. That's how I would do it if it were my decision. We got a system here. It's pretty good, but it's got huge holes in it. Huge. Now we have to fill up those holes and make this thing a real option for people with cars. But they're not really interested in that. They're just interested in expanding because it expands their bureaucracy and capital projects. And this is the problem we citizens have. Now, we can't figure out a way to get the control of this out of these special interests' hands. They have a lock on all of this. And we peons, we sit out here watching it, and I'm out here watching the show, and I do love the show. It's a great entertainment for me. I'm retired. I have nothing to do all day. I have to stay. I'm back east with ill relatives, so I'm sitting in the house basically all day with them, and it's a great opportunity for me to entertain myself. Anyway, that's not either nor there, but how do we get control away from these people and actually get control into a group of citizens that can make use of this for the people? We the people, not for them, for we the people.
And as House Bill 2017 process moves forward, that will be even more intensive because it requires that we identify areas with high concentrations of low-income households and that we focus our attention as we build additional service on those areas. So that will be a very important factor in the future growth of the system over the next 5 years.
Thank you.
So, Trimet had a brief foray into the idea of a bond for affordable housing. In and out pretty fast.
What?
Move the project to Metro and hurry.
I like this woman. I don't know who this is. I've met that woman somewhere, and I don't remember where. And you can see how her style is so upbeat. She's good, man. I liked her presentation.
So my question is, what role are you playing with Metro now in the continuing plan?
Now she didn't get into that, but she touched on the fact that Trimet had to give up because they knew they couldn't get it passed. Trimet just did a study of their ridership, and 86% think that Trimet's doing great, and only 20% think it's not. Okay, but first of all, we know how those studies are performed. But they can't get a tax increase. If all those figures were true and people were really like Trimet, they wouldn't have any trouble getting their tax measures through. So that's how we know those surveys they do with customers are false, because they gave up this bond fast. They realized that they realized it wasn't going to pass. People are not, Trimet does not have a good opinion, a good public relation. They spend millions, but social media has basically taken them down. They had total control of the mainstream media for decades, and then social media came on, and we started seeing the other side of Trimet. Even though mainstream media still has so many viewers, the alternative media has more people than you might imagine. And even my little videos might get 100 views. This might get 30 or 40 for this, because nobody's interested in this, okay? There's a small group of us that are interested, but when we get a few people who we can change their mind, just one or two, if we can actually change their thinking, then they go out into the world with a different mental status, and they can teach people the knowledge that we already have about this. That's the only way we're going to get change, is somehow we have to figure out how to enlighten people on how we're going to change this broken system we have here.
Potential bond measure.
Yeah, okay, let's hear about
I'll take that one. Trimet is not a formal participant in development of a possible Metro affordable housing bond measure. However, Trimet and Metro work very closely on regional strategies to promote affordable housing, particularly in areas with significant transit services. Metro's transit-oriented development program has completed 41 projects to date, leveraging $15.3 million of TOD program developments in support of more than $684 million in development activity. In addition...
$684 million in development activity. Where and where's the money coming from? I want to know more about that.
As noted earlier by Bernie, Trimet works with nonprofit, low-income, and affordable...
See how she's reading? They're all reading. This is you can't take it seriously when they have it all scripted like this, because it's scripted, so they've already written it out to make sure they don't tell anybody anything they don't want them to know. You know what I mean? It's all been vetted, so it's not real. It's fake.
or steep, affordable housing developers such as REACH Community Development to leverage the value of excess properties, mostly lots left over from light rail construction. Trimet will, to the extent allowed under federal law, write down the cost of land acquired for light rail construction that is excess to ongoing operational needs. We'll work to partner with local jurisdictions and nonprofits to use these discounted lands to benefit affordable housing developments.
You know, this is their little mission statement. It's just words on a piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything, okay? It's words.
It's appropriate to station areas. Currently, Trimet is working with REACH and others on a number of projects at 124th and Ash and Northeast Argyle. Combined, these projects are expected to produce between 364 and 373 affordable units. Finally,
373 units. That's not very many. How about 3,000 units? 300 units. I don't know. That seems pretty. It doesn't. And what do you mean affordable?
Trimet, Metro, and the City of Portland are working on strategies to maximize the number of affordable or low-income units that can be leveraged by the Southwest Corridor Light Rail project. Metro received an FTA corridor-based transit-oriented development grant for $895,000. The goal of the grant work is to define a
$895,000 of your tax money. It just makes me sick.
Southwest Corridor equitable development strategy to
They have almost $1 million going into a study about equitable. It's just ridiculous how this is a self-feeding, useless bureaucracy. They just give the money to the people that need it and forget the damn studies.
Address current and future residents' needs around housing, employment, and education as the corridor grows and as the transit investment influences that growth. Trimet and the City and Metro plan to use the work of this program grant to inform strategies for maximizing the number of affordable and
go ahead, read it off there, Annie
that can be leveraged on the project.
Look at her.
So I think I have the last question.
See now, so they're following their script precisely. The question's asked, they read the response. The next question's asked, they read. It's pathetic. Pathetic.
Your expertise walking us through this. This is about electric buses. So you talked about in your opening statements how there are 5 electric buses, I think, purchased with help of federal funds that are arriving later this year. And we're worried. A
whole 5 buses. They're going to run them on the 62. All right. Well, it's better than nothing, right? But I mean, the entire city of Paris is going to be electric in like 5 years. Okay, London. You know, there's some real things being done with electric buses, and it's not here in Portland. Here they're just throwing a few out on a route just to say we're in on the party.
We're not worried. We're encouraged, but we're wondering about what the potential conversion to electric or other alternate fuel sources means for Trimet in a larger frame. So we're wondering.
See, look, he's reading the question. And they have the responses. That's how bogus this is.
If these types of buses cost more to purchase or operate, if there are additional funding sources available, and more importantly, maybe how they change, if at all, Trimet's overall operations, and then if there's a partnership in place with PGE or other kind of local electric entities.
I think I'll field that one. Trimet's very interested in converting from diesel to renewable energy propulsion. We have over the years looked at various different options, natural gas and so forth. Right now, the technology that's most looks the most promising in terms of achieving our goals is battery electric buses. So it's really a question of when, not if. So we definitely intend to be there and convert our fleet entirely to non-diesel. Right now,
all right. Well, he said it. At least he just said they're going to do it. And of course, you need to do it. You need to get the gas engines off the roads.
Industry is sort of in its early period, and so there's risk.
By the way, I grew up in Boston, and they used to have what I used to call them dragonfly buses. The buses that use the overhead wires. They were quiet and they were smooth. You never heard them. And this is 1960s and 50s technology. They got rid of them. They actually had electric buses all over the world, but they got rid of them. Now, I don't know whether that was the gas industry, the petrodollar that fueled that. I probably was. I imagine it was. Because those buses were efficient and they were quiet and they were clean. They got rid of them, and we know how the oil and gas companies really are the top oligarchs' methods. They're the ones that really run a lot of the show. They have control of all the levers of power, the oil and gas industry.
Involved in how quickly we would convert over to the current technology that's out there. Electric buses are significantly more expensive on the capital side right now than a diesel bus. So a diesel bus runs you about $500,000. A battery electric bus could be $700,000 to $1 million, depending on the configuration.
That's not that much different. I thought you were going to say $3 million each.
And in addition to that, you have significant charging infrastructure, both at the depot for overnight charging, and then depending on the type.
Think about it. They need to build a building, some kind of a fucking structure, a garage. They need to run electricity into it, and they need to install the chargers. It's not that big of a deal, so I don't believe them, okay? I don't believe them that it's a big deal. I don't understand. You build a building, you put the electrical in, and then you install the battery stations. I mean, it's like step 1, 2, 3. They probably have it in the instruction book of the bus. Here's the bus. Here's the instruction book on how to install the battery chargers.
Type of bus that you use, potentially charging at the layover location. So once it's out on the route, some of the buses need a top off during the day in order to meet the requirements of the distance that they have to travel. And that end of route charging infrastructure is quite expensive.
Yeah, I don't believe it. Why is it so expensive?
Hook it up to a plug somewhere. You actually have to have transmission lines and all of the other infrastructure to support that.
So what is he saying? They're not going to be able to use the existing electrical infrastructure to charge the batteries. They're not going to be. They're going to have to put in all new high tension wires. What's he trying to say here? See, these are the things they don't tell you. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that this is that big of a deal.
So they're more expensive on the initial capital investment. The hope is that they present a net savings over time because the kind of propulsion system of electric motors and batteries hopefully over time, require less maintenance than a diesel engine, which of course is trying to bang itself to.
It doesn't, look, this conversation is not correct, because this should be the priority of every transit agency in the world, is we're getting rid of these gas buses, period. And we'll buy sufficient infrastructure to take care of the electric buses. Instead, they're hemming and hawing about the price. And, they have so much money over there. When a contractor is short a couple $1 million, they just ask for more and they hand it over to them. But here it's a big deal. You see how they pick and choose what they want to make a big deal out of about its funding. It's pathetic. It's such a fake show.
To pieces every minute of every day. But there are also other issues. The motor and the battery are part of the issue. There's also the bus, and we don't have a lot of history with some of the manufacturers that are in the industry in making buses. Some of the manufacturers, like Gillig and New Flyer, have a long history, but others like Proterra and BYD that are offering this product, they haven't had a bus that's been out on the road for 15 years, and we don't know how they'll perform. And the long-range trajectory of cost savings also depends on sort of the price of the bus coming down as technology improves, the length of time that the bus can be out without a charge improving, carbon credits being a fairly healthy offset of the initial capital cost. So there are a lot of variables which we are studying, and we will have a report that we'll deliver to the board this summer with a recommendation about how when we want to jump into this field and how quickly we want to immerse ourselves in it.
Great. I think it's fair to say we'll be looking forward to kind of learning about that next year as we.
By the way, in China, they've been using electric buses for a long time, and it's not a big. There's a one city in China that has 16,000. They only use electric buses. Shenzhen. You see that? Shenzhen. Now only uses electric buses, 16,500 of them. Yeah, but they can't figure it out over here in America because we're the example of the world, man.
We did our internal conversations about this, thinking, not only does it change, of course, all of the aspects that you've identified, but also, the labor force that's needed to maintain and operate, how long the lines can be, what the routes can be with the difference in weight for the buses. So we'll be really interested to hear more about that once you've had a chance to dig in. And then, of course, as you talked, General Manager Kelsey, about growing the fleet from 600 some odd buses to 900 some odd, we'll be very interested in knowing, what the target and percentages that we'll be trying to convert to alternate fuels.
And that's all part of our analysis and thinking. We have mapped our system to identify those routes that are most amenable to the current electric bus technology. So essentially shorter routes that have fewer hills. And also where we can fit charging technology into our current bus facilities. So Center Street, as Doug mentioned, Center Street is it's out above capacity right now. So there's really not room to put in charging infrastructure. Charging infrastructure takes up about 12% of the space that you have. So because every other row you have to run a little median that has the charging infrastructure and room to plug it into the buses, things like.
Look, Trimet's trying to figure it out. Okay, look. 1,000 electric buses spearhead Paris goal of 0% emission. Okay, we're trying to figure it out over here in our little podunk redneck town of Portlandia, Oregon. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is fucking implementing it.
Like that have to be considered in terms of where we would deploy the buses. That's why the initial 5 are out in Washington County, because that garage has a little bit of extra space and the charging infrastructure doesn't push us over a sort of a cliff in terms of available room. Yeah. And you asked also about additional funding sources. There are some. They're very limited. There's a federal no-low grant program that we use to fund the initial 5 buses. And we're looking at applying for that. There was just a notice of funds available that came out this week on that program. So we're looking at whether we have a niche where we could submit for that federal grant again. But by and large, the funding will have to come from Trimet's resources. And House Bill 2017 encourages us to look at using some of that resource for electric bus. And then finally, the question about PGE. PGE has been a terrific partner on this. And I don't say that just because we're in their building.
That's funny.
The utility has been very interested in electric vehicles in general, both passenger vehicles and buses. We initially submitted an application to the federal government for 4 buses plus charging infrastructure. We were able to work with PGE to get the Utility Commission to agree that PGE could own and maintain the charging infrastructure, and that freed up enough resources for us to buy a 5th bus. And we hope, establishes a precedent that we can look to moving forward, where the charging infrastructure goes from, in this case, 500 or something.
They're like goddamn nursery school kids. We're going to figure this out someday. See, we didn't know what we're doing. I can't imagine going to Paris or China and asking them what's all about. We got to do this on our own because we're in Hicksville.
From $1,000 to many millions of dollars when we fully build out the system. Our hope would be that we would be able to work with
for many millions of dollars. No, give us $2 billion for your fucking light rail, but we don't have any money to convert the system to electric. You see how this plays out, man? They only tell you what they want you to know in terms of, here, this is the good one, and this one we don't have any money for. It's just like the goddamn federal government. Oh, we don't have any money for food stamps, but here, don't tell anybody we're handing $80 billion more to the military, who's never going to win the war because the plan is to stay there forever and eat up the treasury. But don't tell the Americans about it because we don't have any money for your stupid food stamps. We're going to give you a box of food every month.
To have a similar cost-sharing arrangement where they pay for the initial capital infrastructure to do the charging, that frees us up our resources to buy more vehicles.
Thank you.
I'll retract.
Okay. Thank you all for your
it's over.
contributions to the discussion. It was
It's
very
over.
thoughtful.
Thank you,
public,
Jesus. Wait.
Sign up today for a question.
We have public comment. Only one. Only one person. Now, what does that tell you? Only one person in the entire Portland metro area signed up for this. Now, why do you think that is? Because you didn't. First of all, nobody knew this meeting was going to happen. Because they don't tell you. They intentionally don't tell you. Okay, it's out there, but they don't want you to know. Do you understand this? It's not Al's crazy. He's doing crazy shit, making conspiracy allegations. I'm telling you, this is not a lie. They are frauds, man. Huge, big fucking frauds.
Okay. Please come up. Use the microphone.
So this must be an insider, I would imagine. Let's see, who is it?
When you're talking about electric buses, have you heard of TM4 Corporation?
Is it?
It's a subsidiary of Hydro-Quebec, and they were manufacturing electrical turbines. So, and then they went into electric motor manufacture. They retrofit buses and trucks. They have an agreement. I think they may have an agreement with BYD to provide the electric motors. And now they're also partnering with Cummins and a company called Live Axle. So this is really a big concern. And they redesigned their electric motor for 30% more torque with they call it outward rotor topology. And I believe they're very cost effective. And basically they can retrofit buses. I read about a transit agency in Washington, Kitsap Transit, that retrofitted older buses with diesels, and for $89,000 they were able to get vehicles that work like new. So maybe this TM4 would be something to look into. I mean, it's definitely a coming technology, and they seem to be pretty expert in it too. Thank you.
So
Thank you very much.
So he has a vendor recommendation. I like these people that come in there with, well, I know about this one here, and I'm going to tell you about it. Okay.
We'll have a look at that for sure.
Yeah. There's Doug. We'll have a look at it for sure. And I can just see him chuckling. I can just see him thinking to himself, "Who the fuck?" He's thinking, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
If no other comments,
all right, it's
I will
over.
now close the hearing.
Okay.
And open up a meeting of the TSCC.
Wait.
With that, is any comments from the commission on the budget?
Good.
No? Okay. With that, I'll turn it over to Craig.
Is it over or not?
Margot, can you?
Well, wait a minute. It is over. You know how I know it's over? Because, look, 1:16, you can't see it, but there's only 3 minutes left on the tape. So whatever they say from here is not, it doesn't matter. Alrighty, that's it for the budget scripted hearing. It's like a Hollywood production. This was more fun. These last two parts I did were much more fun than the first part. Maybe it's my state of mind. It could be.